Hi, this is Dr. Michael Aronson, www.michaelaronson, showing you my latest invention, which is converting a rowing machine into a human-powered electrical energy generating device to give back to the grid. Now let me get started and just say that this to me is one of my greatest achievements because of the fact that everywhere I read, people said it could not be done. How in the world can you generate electricity from a rowing machine when it isn't a continuous motion? For example, when you use a bicycle, and I did show before, and let me just show you, that is my hand-generated electrical generator. When you have constant pedaling, that generates enough electricity to go to the inverter, which then goes into the grid and saves you energy. There were many problems developing this device, and it works like gangbusters, and there are several reasons why people said it couldn't be done. I frankly was shocked that I was able to do it and do it cost effectively. But one of the things is, and I want to complete my thought, that is that when you row, and here's the rowing device, and you row, there's a row and then relax. And so since the way these are developed, it is challenging to continue to have the wheel, if you will, turn. A lot of times the power inverter gets stuck. Why does the power inverter get stuck? It gets stuck because it's used to a certain type of energy. So from the get-go, before I forget, let me make sure that everybody is aware that this power inverter is a special type of power inverter. It's a power inverter, okay, that's a grid tie, 300 watts, but it's for wind. It's specifically made for wind energy. The reason why that is extremely important is you want to be able to have a continuous current of energy so that the device doesn't air out. And so here's the power inverter, and then what you'll see, and I don't know if you can see it here, is it says, let me just see, dump load. That says dump load, and what you'll see is that there is continuous output. Now, you have to be aware, this is output in the wrong direction. So the cost for this is basically 1 watt of energy during the exercise process to see if this is going to work or not. So during exercise, so you keep it unplugged, because if you have it plugged in, you're losing 1 watt while it's on. Now, you'll see during the exercise that you're going to get a return on investment, and energy will go back to the grid. And exercising against electricity is a wonderful feeling in terms of resistance. But that is something that was the changer, the game changer for me, because when I used the traditional grid tie, which again is shown over here, that doesn't have that dump load, it didn't work. It would power out. So I would be able to get possibly some electricity on the first go around, but then I lost any type of extra power because everything had to reset itself and go from there. Now you can, if you want to, connect something to the dump load here, which are these two, but it's not necessarily required. The other thing is, people who are interested in building their own devices should consider the fact that wind energy is different from solar, and this type of mechanism in terms of exercise is different. By the way, there's my Nordic track proof of concept. This exercise is different than the others because it's intermittent. When the wind blows, for the most part, unless it's constant wind, you are going to get intermittent wind, and you want to make sure you buy the right grid tie to go with that so that you are going to get some return on your investment. Otherwise, people just connect it to a battery and they call it trickling. Electricity trickles. So that's a very important part to say. So let's start from the beginning and see how I developed it. The first thing I did was I ordered this rowing machine from Stamina. and I got it through Walmart. I got free site-to-store shipping. It was the 1405 air rower, and I got it extremely cost effectively. I mean, extremely cost effectively. The competitors or anything else on the market is much more expensive. Now again, do this at your own risk. Read my disclaimer and realize that this is not necessarily for children, because I had to make some modifications in order to make this device work. The first thing is, this basically is what's called an air-based rower. So I took off the fan portion. Normally what you would have here is you would have a resistance based on air. So when you row and you row back, the fan turns, and air resistance is what creates resistance to air is what creates the exercise potential. And the harder you do it, you row, the harder it is to pull, and that's where you're going to get the way the company initially intended, your resistance to exercise. So I ended up taking off the outer fan, leaving only, and it's covered, and I'll show you more. Again, there's probably a lot of patentable ideas for all these devices shown, but these devices are released under the GNU open source license, and I encourage companies all over the country to take these ideas, make machines, sell them, bicycle shops to jerry-rig old bikes, countries that have bicycles and these types of effects, use these, make them locally so that we can improve all of our situations. Because at the end of the day, if everybody did something like this, the cost of electricity would go down for all of us. And I would argue that's my return on investment, in addition to just the good feeling that it has to be able to get this out there. Similar to Linus Torvalds, who I'm not, and he's my hero, what he was going for with his open source approach. It's important to say that because I want people to go and do this. Okay, first of all, it's very important to appreciate that once you know and you have an understanding about the grid tie and how that works, you still have to come up with a way to generate electricity. So, and I have on my blog an example of this. The way to get electricity from this setup and this motor is you have a wheel that the radius, so the length from the center to the end, and the circumference, or the length or distance around this wheel, is much bigger than at the base, which is down here. So again, you'll notice I've got my traditional DC motor that I got for cheap. It's cost effective. I mean, you could argue that it's not cheap, but for what you get and what you can do, and the fact that there's no other competitor, and if you do get anything like it, then the closest is a jerry-rig your own for crazy money, do-it-yourself kit, or you purchase one of these for $2,000, which is cost prohibitive. You'll see that $50 is a reasonable price to pay. But even more importantly, and so I'm going to move just a little bit so that you get a better view and angle of what's going on. Down here is the example of the second part and the smaller circle. So every time that this wheel, let me move back a little bit, this wheel turns, one revolution, you're going to get a whole lot more revolutions to this wheel. And because of that differential, this turns many more times, and that is what powers via a magnet the motor, which is then connected to the power inverter. Now, I've talked about this in other blogs, but repetition's important because sometimes people aren't going to view my hours worth of education, and it's important to say. What I did here was I tied the motor to the device without having any friction here by positioning it in a way, the motor in a way, so that, and using the pulley system. So there's two types of motors that you can get. You can get one that has the ability to add a magnet, and then another type which is basically used for different types of scooter motors, because that's what these are. These are scooter motors. I am going to recommend in the future, and even now, regardless of whatever blog you read on www.michaelaaronsonmd.com, or regardless of whatever YouTube video or the Vimeo video you watch, the one that has the pulley, because the pulley keeps this in check. So I don't have to have any other arguable pulley systems, because it's going to keep this power twist cord in place where it needs to be. So I chose the pulley system. Now notice that I got a heavy steel bar, and this you can get at Ace Hardware. This is not hard to buy. And the reason why I bought it was I wanted to make sure that there was a solid connection here. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm trying real hard to move everything so you can. This is not a curved tip holder, if you will. This is a flat tip. And so the metal is held in place by this readily available connector. I wish I knew the name of it, but I'm blanking. I'm having a senior moment. Apologies. And what you do is you have a piece of metal here that normally is straight, and then you have a screw here. I'm sorry, you have a screw here and a screw here. It's all connected in a U shape. And then you take your bolt and you basically use both bolts to really tie this in tight. If you've bent the metal, you know that this is a tight connection. So I put one here. I put one connecting the motor to the base, and then I did another one here for stability. So the steel plate is secure and connected. The motor is solid and connected right here. And again, I've turned it so that this thing, when it turns, okay, so it's turning. When it turns the pulley that is connected to the motor, and it's not going anywhere, so you can have a nice workout. And then here, let me just show you. What you do is you buy you buy an extender here so that it can extend from the outside here to the motor, and then it turns, it generates electricity and goes from there. The other thing is, and this is probably another patentable concept, I basically, because we're jerry-rigging, you'll see that there is a piece of metal here where you have it's holding, this is the support frame. This piece of metal was getting in the way of the, can you see that? Right there, perfect. Was getting in the way of the power twist. So what I did was I got rollers, see these roll, and they go onto this connector, and this connector is available, and the rollers, these steel rollers, are available at Menards, Home Depot, all these places, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, you can get them anywhere, Amazon, get them online. And what the pulley does is the pulley allows the prevention of friction, so there's a smooth movement. It can be loud, and so you may need to wear earplugs, but at the end of the day, that system keeps the power twist moving. It prevents friction. And notice also, just to say it, the teeth of the power twist are basically facing in. And when you use a pulley, you're going to have that power. See here, the teeth of the power twist? You're going to have them facing in. Other things that I've jerry-rigged, for example, my Nordic track, and I'll show that to you. In order to make that work, what I've had to do is I've had to basically turn the power twist over, and then that's the option there, and there's your belt motor where it's connected. The company says that you can pull this piece out right here and add your own. I had a lot of difficulty, and so, you know, a jerry rig is a jerry rig, but in order to keep this Nordic track human energy generator intact, I had to put a system where you have rollers here and rollers here to keep everything straight so that the Nordic track machine stays on the flywheel. This system, it's not required because everything stays where it needs to stay. Excellent. Now, one thing you need to know about this system, now that we've shown you how it's connected, and again, what happens is when you are rowing, so you row, and here's the seat, you're turning this small diameter area circle. Can you see that? Let's see if you can see that. Okay, so that turns, and then that turning, the chain is what's going to turn it. That creates the wheel movement. The wheel then turns and it changes this one. So here's the, in my opinion, brilliant solution to the problem I was having. The physics of it is based on a principle of the harder you turn, the more resistance you're going to get because it's based on wind speed. Air movement in an air rower is no different than the principle you'd get from the wind turning a wind turbine or fan, leading to electricity generation. Everything is based on the cube of the speed of the wind. And so the cube is, for example, if you have 10 meters per second, 10 times 10 times 10 is, certain math number. But if you get 20, 20 times 20 times 20 is an even bigger number because you're taking a higher number, multiplying it 3 times. So what I was finding is by not having a blocking of the wind, if you will, and creating this enclosed space, notice how I completely enclosed the air fan. And what I'll do is when I write the blog, I'll show you what it looks like, and you'll see what I mean about how this is basically a fan. By taking all that out of it, the real resistance now is the resistance of me against electricity turning the wheel, and allows me to get this wheel to turn faster than the unbelievably hard resistance of both turning a wheel against electricity and having to fight with air. So what I did was I took the box that it came with and I cut circular, and notice how I had to cut this way in order to get this cardboard to fit over. I took a piece of cardboard in the shape of a circle and added it here. And then what you'll see is there is tape that's holding it together. And then the unique concept here, let me again turn just once to show you what I mean. I did it on this side as well. Now, you want the cardboard to stay intact. So in order for that to work and avoid the chain there and the very small amount of space here, so that you're not getting friction, because they're not intending you to do this, but we're going to do it anyway. So what I'm going to show you here is basically, in order to keep these two things together, what I did was I took a screw, and I have a bolt. I have a very big washer, and you can get these washers at Ace Hardware or any place. And that is going to hold or push this cardboard piece into this one and connect it. So here you'll notice I have, and it turns, here's just a bolt, and you have a bolt with, again, a very big washer. And turning it, that keeps these pieces of cardboard together and tight. And I used 1, 2, 3. You see that one? 3, and then 4. So that's what keeps these two pieces of cardboard together. To really complete, based on the way this was designed, to close out all the air, I took tape and I taped the cardboard to the top of the device, which turned out, and you'll see it, it's basically flat. Now, a couple other points to make before I prove the concept and show you what you can expect when you're actually going to use this machine. I went and I got weatherproofing, and the weatherproofing here is basically, it's very cheap. You can get it anywhere. It's normally to keep out the cold in the winter. And I think this cost about $7. And what I did was I stuck a piece here of weather stripping around, and then did another one on this side, and then tied the tape to it. This creates, if you will, and I'm just moving it over a little bit, a groove where you can basically create, if you will, a large pulley. Right? Because that's what this is. This is a pulley, in effect, that helps guide the power twist, just like you have a pulley here, which is guiding the power twist, keeping everything in track, so when I row, this power twist cord stays where it needs to be. Okay, now, here's where the fun comes in. You're going to see what happens when you have a wind generator. And by the way, I keep going back and forth trying to come up with a way to make wind energy work at my house, because I get a lot of wind here in Omaha, Nebraska. The problem is, there is such little data and information to really know what will work and what won't work. I don't want to buy the device, the vertical wind turbine, if you will, and have to do all this setup and fail. I tried to make my own. The problem is balancing. It becomes such a challenge. That's a great idea for a company to basically say, here's how you do it, here's how it works. You need this much wind, and make it for a local situation or a city, or micro as opposed to macro, and then it is probably feasible. So I'm going to show you how this is going to turn as I row. But remember, this is costing me 1 watt to even have this on. But you'll find that it'll be just like wind. I'll pull and I'll row, and when that happens, it's going to turn the wheel. It's going to be loud, so be prepared. And it'll show you how there'll be a short burst of electricity, and as I keep rowing, it'll go up and down and up and down. But when you average it, you will be putting energy back into the grid. It's great exercise. It proves a concept that people said couldn't be done, and I encourage people to go out there and do it. So let's prove that concept. So I've got my feet on the pedals, and I'm going to start pedaling. A couple other things to remember. This is now closed. And so it's, instead of going hard and fast, I recommend slowly pulling back, slowly, getting as much out of it as you can, and then quickly returning, and then slowly creating a constant turning of the wheel. It's better exercise. It's good for you. It exercises different muscles. So let's go and I'll show you. All right, so here we go. Apologies. Okay, now see, when I pull it, look what happens. Is that cool or what? So here you see point 1, and then we'll try it and we'll go from there. We'll begin. So I don't know if you saw that, but I got up to 20 watts of electricity. Very exciting, very doable, and a whole lot of fun. So I encourage you to go and purchase one of these very inexpensive wind-generated rowers and jerry-rig it so that you can create energy, put it back to the grid, and get a great workout. At the end of the day, if you do this with a couple of machines, or depending on the person, I provided the best workout, the hardest workout, the most attainable for people who have osteoarthritis or injuries, so everybody wins and everybody can do it. Enjoy.